Okay, so moving on to bacteria. And now we're going to be looking at bacteria in the urinary system. So these are going to be non-venereal kind of transmitted diseases. And when I say non-venereal, venereal kind of comes from the word like Venus. And if you guys know, like, Venus, that the goddess of like love, I think he was like in Roman mythology. I obviously don't know. Okay, in one type of mythology, so kind of love. So it's non-love, non-sexual related. Okay, so let's see. Well, first off, I'm sure it's going to be the like normal UTIs. Let's see. There we go. Bacterial urinary tract infection. So signs and symptoms. Here we have invading bacteria that can basically invade various parts of the urinary tract. They can invade the urethra where we get urethritis. They can get to the bladder where we get cystitis. They can get to the they can even get to the kidneys and we get pyelonephritis. And if it happens in males, even though it's very rare, it happens in normal adult males. It can get to the prostate as well, and it can go, because remember with males, there's not that distinction between the urinary and the reproductive tract. And if it happens in males, it can get to the prostate where we get prostatitis. Though I have to admit that with males, UTIs are quite prevalent in elderly men just because their prostate gland gets larger, it enlarges, and so they don't urinate as frequently. And so because of that, they're more prone to getting UTIs. So usually females, very prone to it. And then, of course, there's elderly men as well. And then, I believe that it's going to come up again later, but all sorts of things like diabetes, pregnancies, and everything can kind of accentuate that whole shebang. Okay, as I'm talking to you guys, I'm fixing up my notes with these wonderful things. You guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so what are the symptoms? Symptoms usually involve sometimes slight fevers, right? Sometimes you have a slight fever, especially depending on where in the urinary system tract is actually occurring. And then you also have, like, the biggest one is this frequent need to urinate and even pain when urinating. And so this is known as the painful urination and this frequent urgent need to urinate is known as dysuria. A lot of times the urine can have blood in it. Okay, it can have blood. Most of the time, the urine is going to be cloudy. It's going to be cloudy because there's presence of whatever bacteria is in, that's infecting it. It's going to be found there. Any kind of dead red blood cells or dead leukocytes or anything like that can be found. And so that's basically what contributes to the cloudiness. Of course, if there's red blood cells, dead red blood cells, it's going to be a little bit bloody as well. If untreated, this can just keep on growing, right? So it starts at the urinary system, and then it can, as you can see, it kind of progresses. It progresses to the kidneys, pyelonephritis. It can progress to the prostate, etc. So it can keep going, and it can end up into your blood system, in which case we can have bacteremia, and at that point, it's going to be basically fatal. But hopefully, thankfully, the diagnostics are very easy, right? You have that painful, urgent need to urinate, and just very, very frequent urination as well. And so because the diagnosis is so easy, we can fix this before it gets really, really bad. So what causes UTIs? Usually UTIs are caused by basically fecal contamination. So any kind of mostly gram-negative bacteria that you find within your feces. In fact, actually, for most women, not the only way, but one of the ways that they can that they get UTIs often is when they wipe from back to front. Okay, so when you're cleaning yourself, you're done, carrying out your whatever business you have in the bathroom, they're wiping from back to front, and that can actually introduce bacteria from your anus to your urinary system. So there's that to consider. Okay, so usually it is gram-negative bacteria. So something like E. coli is a really big contributor. I believe it contributes to about 70% of urinary infections. We also have things like Klebsiella. Klebsiella can get really bad once this travels to your kidneys. And then you can also have things like Proteus mirabilis, Proteus vulgaris, that kind of stuff. And yeah. The interesting thing about E. coli and Proteus and other gram-negatives I can't think of right now is that they can actually swim. They are motile, so they have flagella, so they can actually swim up your tracts. It can also be caused by a couple of gram positives. So even though they're not as common, It can be caused by streptococcus or staphylococcus or anything like that, but they're just not as common as when they're caused by gram negatives. Where are they? Gram negatives. Yeah. And then with virulence factors of these guys, obviously, if they have a flagella, that's like a really big contributor to their virulency because they can just like swim up your urinary tract. Fimbriae as well. In fact, with E. coli, they have fimbriae and they can attach themselves to the epithelial cells of your urinary tract. Okay. Do we not go over pathogenesis at all? Okay, we don't. So, but basically, I'm just going to talk about it really quickly. What can happen is that the E. coli, like say, gets to your bladder and it can attach itself to the epithelial cells of your bladder and then go inside the epithelial cells of your bladder, thereby actually evading your immune system. And the way it attaches is through those fimbriae. So I just want to mention those. So epidemiology, they're more common in females than males simply because the urethra in females is a lot shorter than the urethra in males. However, yeah, so a lot shorter, so therefore it's closer to the anus, right? However, you have to also take into consideration that there are some, specific male groups that are more prone to it. Like my goodness, sorry, that was my dog. Hold on. Sorry about that. Usually I can catch him right before he starts. Like I can see what he's looking at. This time I didn't. Anyways, so yeah, so certain males are a little bit more prone, and if there are males, of course, that are more prone, this can also lead to the infection of the prostate, and so-called prostatitis, which is horrible. You also have other things that can kind of contribute. So things like I mentioned before, diabetes, pregnancy, healthcare associated urinary tract infections are a big deal. A lot of them, like a lot of UTIs come from healthcare associated things. So yeah, different things. Diagnosis, signs and symptoms, you have that dysuria, that frequent need to urinate and the unfortunate pain that comes about. Also, you can even do a specific check on the urine, and there you'll just see, because of the cloudiness, you can even detect which actual bacteria is causing the UTI. And so it can reveal, like in the cloudy urine, you can have the bacteria, leukocytes, and red blood cells if there's bleeding. Mild UTIs can resolve themselves can basically be resolved by themselves. There's really no need technically to go to the hospital, but it's always kind of best just to get rid of it, just to get on antibiotics like cephalosporins or sulfonamides or something like that. And then you can basically quickly get rid of the infection. Of course, if it doesn't get, like I said before, if we don't resolve it quickly, which I don't really see, like if it can happen if you don't have, like antibiotics available to you, etc. It can spread to your blood, and in which case it can actually be fatal. Prevention, basically just taking care. One actual really big way of prevention is for females, again, like I mentioned before, wiping from front to back after defecation, but also after sexual intercourse to make sure to urinate. That process of flushing out the urine and kind of getting away any kind of possible bacteria that was, remember how we talked about bacteria being introduced during sexual intercourse? Any kind of bacteria that can be kind of lodge itself, right, at the end, right near your urethra, can be washed out with your urine. So definitely urinating after sex is a big deal. Very important. Okay, what's the next one? Ooh, leptospirosis. How do I say leptospirosis? Sorry, leptospirosis. I got excited. So leptospirosis, this is actually, I got really excited because I recently vaccinated my doggy against this. He had his annual vaccines. Actually, I may be able to bring it up on my vet app. But if any one of you has pets, right, you may have noticed that you have to get them vaccinated against leptospirosis. And this is mainly actually more for your benefit. So how do I go? Yeah. Oh, there you go. Can you guys see? Leptospirosis vaccine. Yay. So this is the reasons why you vaccinate usually like domestic pets or like livestock or anything like that is because it is a zoonotic infection. So it is a bacteria that is found, the reservoir primarily like other animals, and all sorts of animals can have it, not just like dogs, but even like foxes, raccoons, livestock, like all sorts of animals. Like there's a myriad of animals that have it. That's why it's actually really difficult to control, because there's just so many hosts. And then it can be passed on to humans. And the way it gets passed on to humans, it's not actually, you think about it, because this is a urinary system disease, it's not actually through your urinary tract. That's weird. It's actually even through just like cuts. This particular bacteria, which is known as Leptospira interrogans, it's called interrogans because if you think about it, interrogation, questioning, it actually forms like a little question mark. And that's because it's a spirochete, and it's like a flexible spirochete, flexible spiral, and it forms a little question mark. And because of that flexible spirochete type of shape, and it's very, very thin, it can wheedle its way through like small wounds and your muscles and everything, and travel vast distances in your body. Basically, it's very mobile, because if you guys remember a spirochete, it is that spiral leaf form happens because of two polar flagellum, right? Two polar flagella at both ends of the bacteria, and then they're still, however, kind of kept in within the bacteria thanks to the cell envelope, and so the flagella kind of fold on each other, and then while they move, they kind of twist and they form that spirally. They twist so that the whole bacteria kind of forms a spirally form. And this spirally form is known as the interrogans, or the question mark form. That's why it's called Leptospira interrogans. Okay, so normally Leptospira interrogans lives asymptomatically in all kinds of wild and domestic animals. It can also live in streams, rivers and lakes, and so it can enter you through there. But it's mainly found in animals. That's one of the main ways that we can pass it on to humans. So any kind of if you go swimming in a lake that has like frequent animal urination or something like that in it, it can pass on to you. So that's where it's prevalent in lakes and in water systems that have like animal urine. Okay. What makes it virulent is that it has adhesins. It's motile. So it's motile. Remember, it has those flagellums, hence the spirochete / interrogans shape. It's chemotaxic towards hemoglobin, and it can evade the immune system as well. So all of this to say, I forgot to mention this, but basically the signs and symptoms of this, you have abrupt fever, myalgia, muscle stiffness, headache. Some of the patients, half of the patients, develop nausea and vomiting and diarrhea. Some of them also develop a dry cough. And then potentially the reason why it could be fatal is because it can lead to, because remember how it enters your blood, but then it will ultimately travel to your urinary system. That is its endpoint. That is its end goal. So it will cause bacteremia and everything, and it can cause all sorts of things, and even affect your central nervous system. But it will end at your urinary tract. And so if it happens there, your kidneys, right? You're going to have kidney failure. You have meningitis. It can cause also meningitis and respiratory distress, which can be potentially fatal. Okay, so express your urinary system from the blood. Oh, here we go. See that question mark? Spirochete. Okay. In humans, leptospirosis develops 2 to 26 days after direct contact with the urine of the infected animal, right, or the urine in the lake of the infected animal in the lake. As long as it enters through your blood, you get it. Oh yeah, urine contaminated streams. Here we go. Oh wow, that's it. Okay. Then the diagnosis is. This is actually a hard one to do a gram stain on. So what we usually do is like antibody tests of the blood or urine. They're used for diagnosis. Treatment is you just treat with antibiotics, and then like I said before, a vaccine is available for livestock and pets, and that's what I have with both of my doggies. We have leptospirosis vaccines, right? I think it'd be cool to see if you guys have it too. Let's see, yeah, I was looking at my other puppy, he too has it. Pretty cool. Okay. Ooh, this was a good one. Streptococcal acute glomerulitis, glomeruli nephritis, because it affects your glomeruli and your nephrons. Okay, so of the kidneys. Sorry, glomeruli nephritis, glomerulonephritis. That's why it's the O that confuses me. Anyways, this is really interesting because it actually doesn't happen because of a bacteria found in your kidneys at that point. It's more of like you had a bacteria, specifically group A streptococcus. You had a bacteria in sometime, affecting you somewhere else. And then the antibodies that attach to those antigens are going to, your kidneys are going to recycle them and they're going to get rid of that waste. However, for some reason, the antibody-antigen complexes of antibodies bound to group A streptococcus antigens, they accumulate in the glomeruli and in the nephrons, and this triggers infection called glomerulonephritis. Oh, dude, I think I got it, glomerulonephritis. So with this infection here, it obstructs blood flow through the kidneys, and so we have hypertension, right, really high blood pressure, and a decline also of urine output. At times, we can even find blood in the urine just because it's, like you have obstruction of blood flow, and so you can find blood in your urine. Usually younger patients that can recover fully, but it's a lot more terrible for adults. And I think it's because adults have like more like a, aggressive immune response, and so therefore more antibody-antigen complexes. And so because of this, it's a bit more progressive and irreversible. Like it can be very progressive in adults and can cause irreversible kidney damage as well. Okay. Whew. Right, so then in the next video, we'll go over non-venereal diseases of the reproductive system. I'll see you guys then.